Good evening. Welcome to the Westmont Village Board Committee of the Whole meeting for Thursday, April 12th, 2012. Ms. Clerk, take the roll call, please.
Mayor Ron is absent tonight. Mayor Pro Tem Emery.
Here.
The clerk's here. Trustee Fleming.
Here.
Trustee Klebanow. Here. Trustee Nero.
Here.
Trustee Scott.
Here.
Trustee Seneca.
Here.
Manager Searle.
Here.
Attorney Zemanek.
Here.
Police Chief Mulhern.
Here.
Acting Fire Chief Weiss.
Here.
Public Works Director May.
Here.
Deputy Police Chief Gunther.
Here.
Acting Finance Director Parker.
Here.
Human Resource Director Casey. Here. Acting Community Development Director Malik.
Here. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item this evening, Village Board minutes. Board to consider approving the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held March 29th, 2012, and the Village Board meeting of April 2nd, 2012. Any changes to them before Monday? Okay, good. We have no requests this evening for open forum, so we'll take reports. I have nothing this evening. Ms. Clerk.
I just want to wish our attorney, Zemanek, a happy belated birthday. I believe your birthday was Tuesday.
It was Tuesday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Already forgotten. But,
Anyway, happy belated birthday
Thank
to you,
you.
John. That's all I have tonight.
Okay. And the attorney?
nothing tonight, thanks.
The village manager?
Thank you. Just a couple of things. I wanted to request an executive session on personnel following the regular meeting. I wanted to also point out, distributed to you is a supplemental purchase order list of one additional purchase order. It's to the West Central Municipal Conference for trees as part of our tree purchasing program for $8,200, and we'd like to add that to the agenda for Monday if we could. And then the last thing I had is to ask Chief Mulhern if he could come to the podium. He's already there. He wants to cover two subjects. The first one involving a maintenance agreement for the range, and I'll let the chief explain that situation.
Thank you, Manager Searle. In front of you should be a draft copy of a maintenance service agreement to have repairs done on our firearms range down in the basement. It is woefully in need of repair. We've been having a hard time finding a vendor that can service and do the repairs. Sorry about that. And we found a company that has a serviceman that will be able to come out. However, they require a service agreement be entered into before he will come out. The fee for the service is just on-site service, as well as we're asking him to give us an evaluation if we can upgrade our range at a lower cost than having to buy a whole new range, or do we have to completely scrap and buy the range? We want someone, an expert, to come out and give us an opinion. The cost of this would be $695. That's basically service. He'll come on and give us a little bit of training, and just, again, give us an estimate on whether we should move with upgrades or should we move on a complete replacement, which we need for our budget considerations. And so this came to light just now. We're trying to get this in under this budget year. Currently have $5,000 budgeted for range repair, so we're well within our budgeted amount to have this done.
Can we put the, on the agenda for Monday approval for the chief to sign on behalf?
Tom, I just have a quick question, because I remember during last budget year, there was a request for monies for the range, and we ultimately decided to do half this budget year and then put half in for next year. Were you able to use the half for this fiscal year? So is that money still there?
That money's still there because it's going to cost approximately $50,000 to $55,000 to completely upgrade, a total upgrade of the range. So I believe what you're talking, we earmarked $25,000
last year.
Yes, not to be used, was not touched. We also budgeted $5,000 for range repair, as if the range broke, and it is breaking, for repair. And then with the upcoming budget talks, decide if we want to earmark another $25,000 next budget year, combine it with $25,000 from this year. It's kind of confusing, but basically had the $50,000 for a new range. However, we want an opinion is, instead of doing that, can we get something that's less costly
Sounds good.
and still meet our needs?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Two other items, if I may. Last night, members of the Westmont Police Department, along with volunteers, 50 volunteer students from the Westmont High School, volunteers from the Westmont EMA, volunteers from the Westmont Alumni Association, went around and participated in our, I believe it's our 4th annual Operation Sticker Shock. This is where the students would go to every licensed business in Westmont that has a liquor license. They place a window, a warning on the window, and basically the warning covers not to sell alcohol to underage children, and also that minors, it's illegal to use fake IDs. It was an outstanding success. They hit all the businesses in Westmont in under 2 hours. Also, I'd like to thank the Park District for the use of their bus. And the school bus. The school district gave us not only 2 teachers, the students, but their bus broke down in Standard Market lot. So we got to call them a tow truck, too. But it was an outstanding success and well received by the majority of the businesses. Some we had a little issues with, but the majority of them was very well received. And then the other thing, I'll put 2 hats on while I can. Tomorrow night, I'm also a member of the Westmont Rotary Club. Tomorrow night, the Westmont Junior High is sponsoring an event, a St. Baldrick's event for Children's Cancer fundraiser. And there's 3 groups doing it, but one of the group is a Westmont Early Act Club. It's a Rotary Club at the junior high. And we also, there's a REACT Club, I believe it is, for the high school students. And so I was approached by the Early Act sponsor of the junior high, asked if I would shave my head for charity, and I said yes. So tomorrow I will be at 7 o'clock. My head will be shaved at the junior high. They're having Irish dancers. They're actually having Mulhern Irish dancers. No relation, but I'll take credit if they're good. And my head will be, there's shavings all along for donations. You can go to the website. If you go to St. Baldrick's, and you just put in the search Westmont Junior High, their event pops up and you can make a donation there. I'm registered if you want to do it in my name. If not, just as long as they're there. And if not, come and have a good time. They have the jazz band's going to be there. They have all sorts of entertainment, and it's all going to a very, very good cause. So as I said at the Rotary Club, you have to announce good news and bad news. Good news is I'm going to do this. Bad news is without any hair, I'll be even shorter than I am now. So if you want to come and have a donation, that'll be fine.
Will you be wearing? Sorry.
I'm sorry, one at a time.
Are you going to be river dancing for charity pledges also?
Trust me, you don't want to see me dance. You don't want to see me.
Hey,
well, you know what? If it's money,
should be,
yeah.
Because I would sign your pledge.
I don't dance. I'm sorry. It's not a pretty sight.
That's the point.
We'll talk.
Okay.
It's negotiable, huh?
And just earlier,
I just was going to ask if you can wear your hat more often.
yes. Yeah, you'll see the hat on a lot more starting Monday. Trust me. So.
I think it's nice that they're waiting till a little bit warmer weather before they did this instead of the middle of winter. But
I appreciate that too. I've never done this before. I know the police chief in Downers Grove did it, and it's through a very good cause. And again, as part of for the Westmont Rotary and for the junior high, I believe their goal was $10,000, and the last time I looked, they were over that. So it's a successful event, and I think this is the first time they've done it. So if we can, come out and support the junior high, the kids, and have a good time. Thanks.
Thanks, Chief. Trustee items.
Can
Trustees.
I add something before you go to
Sure.
that? First of all, I want to clarify for Tom that the high school group is Interact Rotary, and the junior high group is Early Act. And when he said Standard Market, I forgot I was telling everybody earlier, there's a huge article in the Chicago Trib today about our Standard Market.
Oh.
It raves on and on, so everybody should read it. It really speaks very highly of Standard Market.
Thank you. Trustee Seneca.
Thank you. We will have a public safety meeting on Monday in the boardroom at 6 o'clock before the regular voting meeting. Also wanted to compliment our Chamber of Commerce on the wonderful Community Awards dinner that they hosted this past week. It was great, and congratulations to all of the winners, including our Citizen of the Year, John Chorney. It was just a wonderful night. And then lastly, I had the opportunity to attend District 201's meet and greet that they had this week here at Village Hall to congratulate the new junior high principal, John Jonak, and Manning's new principal, Kristen Krestel. It was really a nice event. They had it here before the regular board meeting, and thank you so much for inviting us to that. It was a great night. Thank you, and that's all I have.
Trustee Scott.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Trustee Fleming.
Nothing this evening.
Trustee Klebanow.
Just a couple of dates coming up. May 5th is our shredding event, so I want to remind people to start getting their papers together. You can give 2 banker boxes worth of papers to be disposed of, so don't forget to start saving those up. And then May 11th, I believe we'll be starting our electronic recycling back at Tide Park.
Yes.
Okay, so those are 2 events. I know I already got an old TV we're going to be bringing up there, so tell everybody, don't throw them out at the curbside, please. Just save them and bring them up and get rid of them up there.
It's a $7,000 fine if you try to throw them
I've
away.
seen them out there, so I don't care. So evidently, people don't hear about it either, so. Anyway, but I want to make sure people are reminded that these events are coming up, so start doing it. And happy birthday, John. And,
Thanks.
That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Trustee Nero.
Just a couple things. Again, I wanted to congrats to John Chorney for Citizen of the Year. I think that's great. And secondly, I wanted to congratulate Boy Scout Troop 55. I was just there for a chili eating contest, and I tried 20 chilies in about 20 minutes, and it was fantastic. And I only have 1 stain to show for it. So, again, congratulations. A couple of our residents here in Westmont put it on, and it was a lot of fun. So, thank you.
Good thing you're sitting where you can get out of here if need be.
So I was telling Pat, she's in a good spot.
That way. Blame it that way.
Okay, unfinished business. The Employee Assistance Program Perspectives. Board to consider an ordinance approving an agreement with the West Central Municipal Conference to contract with Perspectives, an EAP service provider.
Okay, in your packet, you had all of the information that we had last time, and then in addition, the declaration page that we need to sign. So hopefully our village attorney approves of all of the documents. Great. Are there any questions from the board members?
Sounds like a great program.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on that?
The amount that they show on here, I guess, goes by how many people, how many employees are covered, if I read it right. On one side, it says covered WCMC employees, and it's up to 1,500. So right now, if I read right, they're expecting, what, the 2,500 employees or something? I'm trying
Is
to.
that the entire consortium number?
No, yeah, that's the consortium. We are joining the consortium.
Right, that's what I'm saying, that's a consortium, so right now we have a pretty good idea on how many members it would be, so we have an idea what the price would be. Is this price something we pay
Right.
per?
Yes, if you look at one of the other sheets, our price is going to be $1.61 per employee per month.
Okay,
That is lower than what we're currently paying and have been paying for a number of years, right?
Correct.
okay,
And that is also lower than what we would pay if we went directly with Perspectives.
Without going through the consortium.
okay, fantastic, that's what I was curious on, is where it compared to before, thank you.
Okay,
Anything else? Thank you.
you're welcome.
Next item, also under unfinished business, easement request, Quincy Street Station Townhomes. Board to consider an ordinance approving a 10-foot wide easement to accommodate planting, service sidewalk, and patio areas.
Thank you. This evening we have Tom Berry with us of Quincy Street Station Homes, the developer. This was an item that was originally scheduled for the March 15th Committee of the Whole, and it was tabled at that time at the petitioner's request so that they may have some additional time to do some research and follow up with the Downers Grove Sanitary District. Just prior to the meeting this evening, Mr. Berry provided me with some additional documents, including correspondence from the Sanitary District with today's date. There is a letter in there indicating that the Sanitary District appears to have no objections with the irrevocable easement. However, staff hasn't had a chance to have a conversation with them, similar to what we did with the last correspondence back in March. So we'd like to be able to do that and can certainly follow through with them before the Monday night meeting. So just by way of background, the Quincy Street Station Townhome project was approved back around 2005, and at that time, for whatever reason, the easements were not clearly delineated. There was a 7-foot section of right-of-way that the village worked with the developer so that was vacated so that there could be additional footage to work with to make the project work. However, the easement that is being requested would be, I believe it's 10 additional feet, bringing the right-of-way to 49 feet. So the staff position has been that that's not the best position for the village to be in. Typically, right-of-way is 66 feet, and right now there's 59 feet remaining. There's public utilities about 2 feet off of the proposed easement. Now, Mr. Berry, I believe maybe here with the potential new purchaser as well. Yes. There is correspondence that was provided several weeks ago from Mark Olson, one of the contract purchasers, and he is also here and be able to give you a little bit of perspective from the buyer's side as well. With all that, I can turn it over to Mr. Berry and then answer any questions that you may have. And also, I'm not sure if Steve May has any comments from Public Works perspective.
Well, thank you. I'd like to thank the board for their time for hearing this matter, and my attorney is here. This is Peter Jagle, and Mark Olson is my customer. He is living in the townhouses and is an owner. And Ed Hall is my broker, and he is out of Hinsdale. As Shannon said, I'm asking for a 10-foot revocable easement that I believe you all have seen a draft of.
Irrevocable.
Irrevocable easement, I'm sorry.
The staff position is for revocable with 1-year notice, and Tom is requesting irrevocable.
Yes, thank you. So I am in agreement with the wording on the easement, with the exception of the 1-year notice for revocability. To give you a little history on the project, we initially, the information that I provided here to you was when we initially bought the first parcel, which was a house that was located there. You might have remembered that. It was a red house. Was laid out horizontally there along the tracks, and then there was actually a 5-flat apartment building that was further to the west. And so when we initially made the first purchase, we had a due diligence, and we came to the village and asked that in order to make the property buildable, we would need an additional 7 feet, because the original piece of property is only 58 feet deep. So the 7 feet gave us a 65-foot lot, a 65-foot deep lot. So after designing the townhouses that we had in mind were a project that was done in Naperville called Williams, I believe it was Williamsburg, and it also is adjacent to the tracks. On the south-hand side of the tracks in downtown Naperville. And this floor plan was very similar, so we used this floor plan, and in order to maximize our square footage, because basically our building pad is only 40 feet, we needed to put the garages in the back. And so with the access for the garages in the back, and also we needed 2.5 parking spaces, so we included the garage as 2, and then another parking space being behind the garages. So we have basically a rear access area that's about 23.5 feet there, and then the retaining wall at the rear. So initially, the plan was always, and the information I actually provided you was from the first approval, which I believe was 14 units. And then after that, we purchased the 5-flat that was further to the west and made the project larger. But The plans always called for the public walk to be moved closer to the street, and there be a 10-foot planting area adjacent to the units. And with the noise of the traffic, I mean, the code at that time was all masonry construction. I don't know if any of you actually saw the buildings being built, but not only is it solid masonry, but I'm a carpenter by trade, and the units were built in such a way that they are not truss joist construction, where the floor joist members actually sit on the block wall and provide the wall structure. This unit, these townhouses are built with 2x6s and 2x4 construction throughout, and conventional framing in the roof, which was allowed me to finish the attic space and create a vertical living and create additional square footage in the attic space. So hence, we have about 3,200 square feet with the fourth floor. Well, basically, this easement is really crucial to the success of the project. When I had my first buyer, and we did not form the homeowners association until we had our first buyer, this actually came up. And so being that we didn't actually own the property, we couldn't put it in the homeowners association. So at that point, I informed my contract buyer at that time of the situation. And fortunately, he's an attorney, and so he was able to. We were able to work through this, and he knew that I was working on this easement. We've been working on the easement with village staff for a couple months now. So you know, by not having this easement, it would just be a major objection for any buyer. You can imagine, you know, someone buying a townhouse, and them, obviously I would be disclosing this to them, and they would see the easement could be revoked with a year's notice. And so to have this, and I'm sure all of you have seen the project, but to have the patio area in the front removed would be a major stumbling block. And I feel that we really need this to be successful with the project. Not to mention that we could have problem with the banks today are very fickle, and so, you know, I worry that even a buyer's bank might have objection to that, as well as any potential banks that I might get to finance the balance of the project. So I would introduce Mark at this time and have him talk about how he feels it would impact the development.
Thanks, Tom. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is, I'll make this relatively brief. When I was giving some consideration to purchasing this property, one of the things I did, because I've lived in the Chicago area for many, many years, was try to decide whether or not Westmont would be, first of all, is Westmont a place I want to be? Does it have resources, and does it have what it is that we need in order to live the type of comfortable life that people should live? What Tom has built is, speaks for itself. If you haven't been through it, you should go through it. You should go through one of the models and find out exactly what the quality of the construction is. When the easement question was raised, and the fact that the easement was revocable, it caused a question and a problem. The problem is really not for me, and it probably will not be for the buyers of the first 4 townhomes that you see constructed down there. Your problem is going to come in future development. What does the fact that the city can revoke or the village can revoke the easement mean to a potential lender? What will the lender do? Will the lender loan for the project? The village right now is caught in the same conundrum that most villages are caught in. You've seen real estate values go right into the sink. Right now, what we want to do is figure out what is the best way that we can accommodate development, that you can accommodate the ability to utilize property in the best way and enhance the properties that exist in Westmont and build additional properties that will be good for the city, good for the community, good for the schools, good for whatever we want to develop in the future. My concern about the city's ability to revoke is that at some point we may wind up with a lender that looks at it and says, no, we're not going to finance this project. Or worse yet, you'll have a borrower come in, and I don't know if any of you have financed a property recently. If you have not, talk to one of your friends that have tried to get financing. For us to get the financing for Tom's project was, and I saw this, and this is a little bit crude, it's almost like a colonoscopy of your finances. They look at everything you've got. It's not like when we bought properties 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Today, if someone's going to come in and buy a property in Westmont, they're going to go through an excruciating process to borrow. If there is an impediment in the borrowing, and there's very little question that the removal of an easement could be an impediment to future development, and this is what I want you to consider, not me. I'm not going to get hurt by this. I bought because I understood that no matter what happens, I have a valuable property. I'll get at least what I put in it. I don't buy a house to invest in it to make $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 down the road. That's not the reason I purchase property. I purchase property to live in. And hopefully I'll get my money back out of it. And in Tom's development, I will get my money back out. For the village, though, the consideration is, how can Dom develop the property to the west of us in the future? Is this an impediment? If it is, my argument to you would be it's something that you really ought to think seriously about and allow the easement to be permanent, because the chances of the village widening this street, Quincy, down to the end in any meaningful way in my lifetime is 0. In maybe some of the younger people, their lifetime might be 1 in 100. But if it turns out to be an impediment to development, then that's a mistake. And that's the consideration that needs to be made, is what does this mean to the future of the community? As a purchaser, the decision I made, with apologies for being repetitive, had nothing to do with my personal, I wasn't worried about it. It's not a big deal to me. And it won't mean anything to me in the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years. What it would mean to me would be that Tom can't develop what he wants to do down on the west side of the property. And that's something that I would argue that merits some very serious consideration. No matter which way you come out, think very seriously about what a right the village has that may block something that you never intended, never thought of. Because if we haven't learned anything in the last decade, the one thing we've learned is the law of unintended consequences comes to play. And things that we don't think are real important actually turn out to be. Anybody have any questions of me?
Of Steve or Shannon, whoever knows, what utilities run below there now?
I believe it's water and sewer.
Not below the easement, it's adjacent.
It's 2 feet off.
Adjacent to the easement.
Right.
How close?
Can I get an answer?
2 feet.
Actually, there is, there's obviously storm sewer that we're putting in, but the sanitary sewer is just actually on the west end of the property. Most of it is actually under the sidewalk, under the public walk. On the east end of the property, it's under the public walk. On the west end of the property, it's actually about 2 to 3 feet to the north. And I talked to, the first thing I did was talk to the sanitary department. This is not uncommon for them. Sewers come from the back, sewers come from the back sometimes, and from the front. So it's not uncommon for people to put improvements over the top of their sewer. Matter of fact, I have an agreement with them, it's their standard agreement, that if they tear up anything, that they repair it. And that's an agreement that we had 6 years ago that was put into place. So they don't have an objection to it. I mean, obviously it was all inspected and it's all solid. So there's no issues there. And, you know, again, I would, you know, this, without me trying to keep it short here in going through the documentation that I gave you, the patios were always intended. When we actually brought the concept, we showed some other projects that were similar. There's a project in Downers Grove that's similar to this, where there's improvements that are in the right-of-way. And so the landscaping was also, you know, obviously approved by the village and scrutinized. And I mean, I have letters to that effect, and I could have given much more information, but Bob Fleck actually, you know, talked about where the sidewalk was placed and the fact that we had to take down some parkway trees, and he wanted to try to save the existing parkway trees, and we ended up putting all new parkway trees in. But we put in piers. Instead of putting those piers in with concrete foundations, those piers are just on stone. So there's a 1-foot stone bed that's compacted, and on the corners there's brick paver piers that are existing. So we designed it in such a manner that if it did have to be removed and rebuilt, it could. And with the directional boring today, if the village has any needs to get under it and directional bore, they can. There's no electric in it. The gas is actually up front as well. It's not in that part, the natural gas. The electric, I ran for the existing 4 units. It's from the telephone pole that's on the right-hand side adjacent to the train station. For the rest of the project, it will be coming from the pole to the pedestal on the far northwest corner. So they will come down there, and then they will trench across the back of the property close to our vault, which they won't trench across. Actually, I'll provide that for them. So I will provide a trough for them and actually put in all the piping, and then they will run from that telephone pole through the piping to the transformers that are needed to service the rest of the unit. So there is no utilities there except the sewer, and the sewer favors the public walk where we poured it through now, and the parkway trees are there. So again, I plead that this property really was, you know, pretty much unbuildable as its present state. And so at the time, you know, we asked for 7 feet to purchase. We purchased 7 feet, and we didn't want to ask for any more at that point because, you know, of keeping it uniform. The parkway is uniform, so the amount of green space that's from the curb to my sidewalk is actually 6 feet, not my sidewalk, the public walk, and then the public walk is 5 feet. And there's actually 11 feet from the inside of the public walk to my buildings. Now, one of the things that I had also just given recently to you was the fact that I have escaped the interior units, not the corner units, but the escape window wells for the basements on the end units are on the side, but on the interior units, the only place I can put them is in the front. And those escape windows, there is an offset there, so those units are inset 8 inches, but those window wells actually protrude into that right-of-way about 29 inches. And so, you know, again, this is not, we always, from day one, all of our plans always showed this. We just never tied it down with an easement.
Questions or comments from the board?
The only question I have is why would we want a 1-year revocable scenario? For what reason?
There is not a plan at this point to do any capital improvements that I'm aware of that would require utilizing that right-of-way. But the purpose of having that revocable easement is to think long-term, because that may not always be the case. So, and it would also be a method to avoid having to use eminent domain if we ever needed to go in and acquire that property for public improvements. So I would argue that there's not a utility right now, but the actual infrastructure in the road could be considered comparable to a utility. And this is a difficult case because the developer has an asset in the property that he's acquired, but the village has an asset in our right-of-way. So I'm not sure what the middle ground is, but unfortunately, if it's not revocable and we have a need to get in there for any reason, we potentially would have to go the route of eminent domain.
Well, couldn't there be some form of agreement made with him down the road? I mean, if you say we have to get in there for a reason, I mean, would it be because we're going to widen the street, or would it be for some other reason, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well,
It could be anything.
let me throw something in here. I see the perspective of both sides. Mr. Berry, I certainly appreciate how this could affect the development and lenders' perspectives and all that. I also appreciate the village's position. So here's what I think, and I'm just throwing this out here as a possible middle ground. I don't like the idea of irrevocable. I would vote against that flat out, I can tell you that. Irrevocable is a awful word. Things change, things happen, and long after all of us in this room are gone, your buildings may or may not still be standing. I don't like the idea of putting the onus on a developer or on a potential purchaser to say that the village could come in with 1 year's notice and revoke an easement. I think that that would be, it's harsh and I don't like it. What I would think is more equitable is to grant an easement to the property as long as that property, as long as the improvements which were made to the property exist on that property. So that's an easement for however long your buildings stand, you know, God forbid you know, the whole thing slides onto the tracks or whatever. With the caveat, because I'll tell you, I understand directional boring, and if you want to see straight line directional boring go bad, ask Lyle about what happened on College Avenue. It was a disaster when they hit bowling ball sized rocks and the whole thing had to be trenched. That said, if the village needs to fix whatever, or they're going to run a water main, or they need to fix a sewer, they need to be in there. So it's sort of and John's going to have to give us some direction on this, where you would get an easement to that property as long as that development stands on that property. But somebody might come in, you know, 40 years from now, and here's an irrevocable easement that is, now what do we do? You know, if those buildings have lived their life in 50 or 60 years, and here's this strip of property that belongs to that building, and that building is no longer there. It creates a nightmare later. So if we can give you an easement while that property is developed as is, you know, I don't know if your development has a name or whatever that can be referred to in a contract, that you have this easement, subject to the village being able to fix whatever utilities we need to fix. And quite honestly, it's just like everywhere else in the village. If we have to tear up somebody's plantings, or we want to go in with directional boring and we can't, and we have to trench it, if we have to tear up somebody's concrete patio, just like everywhere else, we would replace it. And things would be reinstalled to the way they are. Is that something you can live with, if we can do it?
Yes, absolutely. Now, I have to say that village staff has been great to work with. I've been working with them all this time, these many years. And so they did prepare an easement. And it actually allowed for the village to come in and make any repairs that they see necessary, as well as if there was any impact that it had, in terms of insurance, and it has hold harmless in it. It has many things in it. So actually it gave you the right, it gave the village the right to make repairs without fixing. And I was in agreement with that. It was just the revocable part that I had issue with. So
Right,
yes,
so I don't like irrevocable. That means forever.
I understand that, and I understand the village's position on this, and so I would be happy with that, absolutely.
I don't know what my fellow trustees think on it.
I have a question for John in Ellen's scenario. If, and this is crazy, but what if someday we decided we needed to widen that stretch of road because we're doing an overpass or we're doing an underpass, which could potentially be a long-term plan for Cass Avenue to be decided. Something of a big magnitude. In Ellen's scenario, then we would have to exercise eminent domain.
Correct.
To get that easement back.
Correct.
And that would be an incredible cost to the village.
It would definitely be a cost. Be fair market value of the property.
I'm with staff on this. I'm not comfortable with even Ellen's plan.
To even widen Quincy, I mean, look at what's there. You're not going to get wider than a 2-lane road on
No,
Quincy.
but I mean, like you said, what could happen in 10 years, 20 years?
I think for us
we're talking 17 feet that we've given up.
I think for us to have encouraged this development and stood behind it and looked at that piece of property and said, you know what? They're willing to take the risk. It's not what I would consider an ideal piece of property because I'm not enamored with trains that much.
No.
And kudos to you, Mr. Berry, okay? The village stood behind you to develop it and all of that. I think we need to stand behind you for you to continue to develop it what the original plan was envisioned. That's my thought on it. I don't see, I mean, if we widened the road, we would have to put the shoulder on your patios. So that is something I am comfortable saying ain't gonna happen. But I don't know. But I'm at least comfortable with that, so.
Well, what happens with the rest of the development then? If they can't get funding for this, is this the end of it with the buildings that we see now and the lots will stay empty? And what else could possibly go in there that we won't run into the same situation again?
Nothing. And when we say what else could possibly go in there, knowing that we've got a 1-year revocable easement, who's gonna build on it? Nobody.
And you're sure not going to put commercial there? I mean, anything. And it would have to be residential for what we want down there anyhow.
No.
So if we go with, I hate to say it, with the way staff, at least it sounds to me, with what they want, it almost makes it a dead duck.
Yeah. And as diligent as staff is, I do appreciate it, but we need to find a middle ground, and that's the only thing I can think of. John, if you've got any other scenarios, please let us know.
Well, it's the staff's job to look out for the village's best interest.
Right.
And that's what they're doing.
The lots are uniform from east to west, so the same development style could be developed. I think it's just from Mr. Berry's perspective, a lender issue at that point.
I'm sorry?
The lots, there's nothing that narrows about the lots from east to west. You still have the same room to work with further west on the site. So there's nothing that physically limits you from doing anything, doing the development comparable to the units that are completed, correct?
Correct. But the, the point is that with the pad that we have, which is, we have the garages and the drive in the back, we have a 40-foot deep pad here. in order for there to be any outdoor space at all for them to get away from railroad, it's in the public right away.
My point is just that the layout is the same. It doesn't change further
The only thing he
west
could
on
do
the
is he would
site.
have to change his layout to make the buildings narrower but longer, so he'd have more.
Or find that middle ground.
Yeah,
with
but
this
then he'd
easement
also have less
discussion.
buildings there.
It's been reduced once, I
Right.
believe, already.
Yeah.
Right.
I actually, the village staff had asked me to look at a project in Libertyville, which was near the tracks, and it's a residential project. And what they did is, now the pads were, and I actually brought information, but the pads were considerably deeper. These units were in the neighborhood of 70 feet deep. But they had an alley in the back with the garages in the back, and then they also had, you know, some space. They had some space in the front, and some of the units had porches in the front. And I had actually, I had asked staff probably about a year ago, because we eliminated a unit in the middle. I mean, I wouldn't be able to build this 10-unit building. It would be too costly. And so we thought, well, maybe if we put the units 3 foot apart, if we went in and asked that you approve residential in that area, and I built the same units, but built them 3 foot apart, I could build them one at a time. And then that might, you know, help the project along. But I was still, I mean, the floor plan, we've always had good feedback on the floor plan. Everybody likes the floor plan. We have elevators are optional, and we're maximizing the square footage there. I probably do a few things to bring the cost down. I had actually talked to the fire department when they were out for a recent inspection about if they would require sprinklers in that type of scenario. And so we would, you know, do some things to try to bring the cost down with the market. But I'm not there yet. I mean, right now, we have 2 units rented out, 1 unit sold, and we use 1 unit for a model. I did actually just lose a deal, and we did have a contract on another townhouse there, which we lost. So in terms of the center section or the rest of the project, I still, I have looked at other options in terms of floor plans and such, and you know, this floor plan is still, I think, the best for the project, and requires this patio area in the front. And again, I would plead that, you know, when we came in and asked for the approval of this, we always showed our patios in the front, in the right-of-way.
I agree with you, Mr. Berry. I've been over there, and I've looked at the units, and I think 3-foot section between them, they'd look like tenements. I like the original design with the 4-unit buildings. So, you know, I've told you what I thought, so anybody else have any other comments?
I've been inside the building. It's probably one of the nicest ones in town.
Thank you.
It really is.
They are beautiful. They are absolutely beautiful.
I tend to agree with you, Trustee Emery. These people came into town, we allowed it to be done. We want to see the rest of it finished. And I know economic times are going to dictate that, but I think we have to, we do look at the future, what's going to happen. I believe we're not going to be widening that street. I can't imagine that, or if, you know, you've got buildings on both sides, new. You've got the row homes on the other side there too.
Yeah.
Where's it going to go?
It's a residential street. It's not a thoroughfare.
Well, my thought on possibly, I wouldn't think would widen it, if we ran into a traffic problem, we could just continue the one-way going west, where people can still shoot down the side streets, you know, and come back a different direction. And in fact, that probably would have been very wise to continue down the street, where I see cars coming back and they still have to come up the side. So I don't really foresee any reason for widening, even if we found a way of getting over the tracks a different route. But, you know, I'm going back and forth, and I'm trying to think, you know, if there was any other reason other than that we would need that easement. I mean, I like the idea of at least the positive easement, that if anything's happening to those units, we have the right to get in there to do it. That would affect his units, he would want that.
I mean, if we had thoughts of doing something with that property, I was not on the board at the time, but why would we ever have approved it?
The only thing I understand that, and I know it's a risk everybody takes on those things, and hopefully the builders, you expect that they have done their due diligence and they understand what they're getting into. That, to me, gets where I get a little irritated when they come back later and say, oh, well, here's the problem. I felt if they did their due diligence, they shouldn't have to come back later. But on the other hand, the only thing I worry about, and I don't know if this is in any of our studies for our water flooding issues and things that would require in the future for us to do anything for water, issues in that area.
It's not on the Morris as
It's not on our
area.
that street. So if it's not on that street, that would be the worst issue I could think of.
I mean, everybody sitting here has the luxury of whatever they purchased has a front yard and all that. Imagine if the house that you're sitting in, you could have a 365-day notice of something coming right up to your front door. Now, come on. Who wants to live like that?
It's happened in areas people never thought it would ever happen.
Yeah, it's happening right now.
It's happened, but
Yeah, I know.
people who didn't even
And
have
it's-
easements.
But I'll tell you something, we encouraged this. This is a beautiful development in a difficult area, and I'm not for
I always
a
thought it'd be
1 year.
a beautiful
1 year.
buffer for the residents on that side. It's an unbelievable, beautiful buffer to block the tracks and stuff. So, now, I don't know if unless staff can come up with some other issues, what might be under there and what they may have to have, whether NICOR or any of those people could possibly have a reason that we would need that 10-foot. We still have some other areas. We'll still have from the sidewalk to the curb, won't we, that we can do some easements? And with the sanitary district in there, I don't think there is very many easements you put in with the sanitary.
Well, the reason I'm pushing this is because this is up for a vote on Monday, and I don't want it to be all or nothing. I'm trying to get my fellow trustees to agree on what I think is a middle ground that everybody can live with, but in order to do that, it would have to be on the agenda for Monday. So we need to give John some direction as to whether we're doing that, and if you need more time, please say something to postpone it, but otherwise, we need to hear about what we're going to do on Monday.
Steve, do you have any comments? Steve May?
Well, I do, and they're the same, and they're actually have already been, very well described. I don't, my opinions don't lie with the development or the value or all the good reasons that went on. But just in general, and just in general, we, the village, gave up public right-of-way to accommodate this, and the only reason that was even considered, well, actually it wasn't considered, but the only reason it became considered was because we have to have the ability to have access to that later for all the reasons that we can't think of today. And this is what we're going through. We're trying to troubleshoot it. We don't know today. It isn't about what we know today. If we knew what it was today, we wouldn't be talking about it. But if every example that's come up with has been some surface improvement, widening or pavement, and the whole time I've been sitting here, I've been thinking about, the value of what's underground. We can't do a water main replacement back in the same alignment where the water main is. It's got to be 10 feet away from the old one. You have to build the new one before you can abandon the old one. You have to do all the surfaces. If we were going to do that, we would always employ all the good construction methods. Having the easement doesn't necessarily mean that, you clear it and do what you want to do, and walk away from it. We do a lot of directional boring with what we do, but directional boring isn't, you still have pits, you still have, if there's services, if it's a utility where there's individual services, you got to dig every place there's at. If it's a water main, there's fire hydrant alignments, there's a lot of digging that goes with it. So to have something that, when it's public right away, it's public and it's permanent and it's forever. And to give that up and without having an easement that can be forever is just, I guess that's your decision. We don't know today what that value might be.
What about the suggestion that Trustee Emery made?
Well, as long as we have access to it, that's really the concern. if we've got the ability to use it in the future for reasons we don't know today, that's the only thing we're looking out for. We don't have a plan today. The water main's not scheduled to be replaced. It could be 50 years from now.
The easement as drafted right now is actually silent about the village's ability to go on the property and make improvements. We have the ability to terminate the easement as it's drafted, and that of course is a problem. But if it's irrevocable, if we were to make subsurface improvements, I guess there's no language in there allowing the village to go in there, and if we do, I assume there's an obligation to restore the property to its condition.
It would always be, right?
And that's what you're talking about, is not so much the surface improvements, but the ability to do subsurface improvements under there, which still could allow the use and enjoyment, the landscaping, the patios, et cetera, of the homeowners, but will allow the village to get underneath.
If something like that had to be removed for whatever reason, it was unavoidable. I mean, I say that in today's terms, this staff and this board, but we always restore back to, equal or better condition than,
and if that's the case, it's silent in the agreement whether the village has any rights to go on there and perform either surface or subsurface work. I'd understand surface work is something that would not make any sense under the circumstances, but the subsurface work may be a reality some decade. And if you restore the property, I don't see the harm. I don't see the harm from a lender's perspective either. Just another thought to throw out there. If you were without that right to get on the property and make subsurface improvements, and by granting a permanent easement, you're essentially giving up the property forever. So you might as well vacate the right-of-way and sell it for fair market value to the developer.
Which we can't do. We need our utility easement. They need their use and enjoyment easement. So we need a combination of the two. They need surface easement, and we need subsurface easement with egress through the surface if necessary.
Well, I heard a comment made that, I think it was you, Mr. Berry, that made the comment that somewhere along the way back then, there was a draft made by the village proposed to you on how to handle this scenario. Do we have a copy of that anywhere?
Yes, we do, but as John suggested, the verbiage really was more, it didn't really address the issues that we were just speaking about.
But did it give an easement size?
Yes. Yes, and the survey here actually is attached with it, so we have a legal description, and the easement consists of this area right here. But I would be in agreement with that, and I understand that the village needs that. And that is why when we designed it with brick paver patios, so that if it did need to be accessed from the top, it could be easily done. If it was poured concrete or stamped concrete, it would be much more difficult. But brick pavers can easily be peeled up, and you can dig below and repair.
Mr. Zemanek tells me that to Monday night to come up with something for us to look at is enough time for him. He doesn't need more time than to Monday night. So, I mean, because we could debate this and all that. Why don't we put it on Monday night's agenda to hear how he's drafted it so that we can accomplish everybody's goals?
I just wanted to point out the original draft should have been in the packets for this evening.
Okay. I do have a question, though. A lot of times on certain sides of the street, they share the utilities for across the street. Is there anything on his side, if we said it can only come, whatever we're doing with that easement can only fix his building, is there anything around there that could possibly affect the trust?
Still, we have access for whatever utilities we need to
Right,
access.
but when you said for his building, that's what worried me. You said
No, for his
anything-
building is the easement on the surface for the patios, the landscaping, the service sidewalks is for the life of the property as developed. What he's asking for
But anything
on-
we need to do in that easement area, even if it affects something we have to get to for people who live on the south side of the street, we can
That's
still
still a
access
utility.
it.
We still have to get to the utilities if we need to get to them.
Okay.
That goes for wherever the utilities branch to.
Doesn't matter what property.
Right. Are you okay with that? I mean, that's a,
Yes.
we have ultimate faith in our village attorney.
Yes,
and
we
he's very
do.
clever and,
He's a year wiser now, he's had a birthday.
yes. And by Monday, he can work miracles. That's why we keep him.
Thank you. I brought my attorney here, but I was worried that I might need support, and I know Ed Hall, he talks too much, so you probably don't want to hear him.
But I would like to say something,
Yeah, got to come to the podium, please.
if I may.
You have to come to the podium.
Ironically, this is a somewhat moot point, because in 2001, I represented a company called Rott Development in Naperville. I was the marketing company for their development called Spring Street Station, which is the one that Tom Berry gave the wrong name of, which backs up to the railroad tracks. And we had the same issue here before that city council, and the same thing was ultimately ended up with an easement, okay? So ladies and gentlemen, I just bring that to your fact. I've known Tom and his dad, who's passed away, for many, many years, over 30 years. I've been doing this for 45 years. You know, I've enjoyed the building side, the real estate side, the residential side, et cetera. And I've worked with builders for many, many years. I don't even want to go into the number ones that I represent today. I've done this many, many times in front of the city councils. But again, I represented Rott in terms of their marketing of Spring Street Station, which was 122 units, and they had the same issue on, in particularly the street that backed up to the railroad tracks. And the city council of Naperville at that time wrestled with the same problem. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And it was resolved with an easement, just like, Madam Mayor, you're talking about right now. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. So stay tuned and come back Monday night at 7.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for your time.
Next item, new business, tobacco dealer licensing. Board to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 22, Businesses, Article 8, Tobacco Dealers of the Village Code of Ordinances to allow the village president and village board to control the number and type of tobacco business licenses within the village.
A draft copy of the ordinance was distributed around the table this evening, so you should all have that. This ordinance came up as a result of, I believe, conversations that originated at planning and zoning after we've had somewhat of an onslaught of tobacco-related businesses over the last probably year or so. Currently, the way that our ordinance is written, a business would just apply for a regular business license, and then there's a fee assessed for tobacco sales. There was no, real process in place in order to analyze them. It was basically just zoning and a business license. So what we have before us this evening is a methodology to analyze by type of business. There are two types or classes. Class A is for those that sell tobacco as kind of ancillary to their main lines, as grocery, gasoline stations, or restaurants. And then Class B, which would be everything else, and is intended to capture those places that are tobacco shops, cigar shops, accessory shops, those things that they don't really have other main lines of items for sale. In the ordinance, the Class A license, so the ones that are selling ancillary, would be a $200 license fee, and the Class B strictly tobacco retailers would be a $500 licensing fee. Now, these are just draft numbers. We were kind of looking to our massage license because some of the types of review and time spent is comparable in terms of what we think would be necessary as we look at whether or not there's room for additional tobacco retailers within the village. The thought was that we would handle the licensing as similar to liquor licensing and increase and decrease licenses accordingly, just because we have had so many of the business type, and we're going through our comprehensive plan process. There's language in here, thanks to Anne Marie Perez, indicating that the mayor would have the right to request a business plan and additional supplemental information where we have not had that teeth up till now.
Sure, and on the perspective of the background investigation or knowing who actually owns and operates these particular businesses, very similar to liquor, very similar to massage, where the village has an obligation to know who's in town and who's operating these types of establishments. Once the process gets going and the application is submitted, the police department would be tasked with conducting a background investigation on the owners of the tobacco establishments, very similar to, I would say, somewhere between a liquor background investigation and what we might do for a solicitor permit. So, liquor, there's a lot of, there are bigger buildings, there's other considerations that we take into account when issuing a liquor license. So tobacco is probably a little less than that, but just to be able to put a name and a face to the application and to let them know that we have checked on them and that they meet certain standards set forth by the village.
Well, does that mean then we're going to have to charge an application fee for that too? Like we do the liquor license?
We currently, no, the application fee is built into the fee for the license. It would be less comprehensive than a liquor background investigation, but certainly thorough enough to have a good picture of who we have in front of us.
Well, you know that you and I talked a little bit before the meeting got started, and one of the concerns that I have.
Sure, and to address those concerns, we will have a survey for Monday's Public Safety Committee meeting. We will check surrounding towns for their fee structures, what they're currently charging for these type of licenses. We will also conduct a survey to make sure that we are, see what other towns are doing as far as how they regulate the same type of licenses. I'll have that for you on Monday night.
Okay.
So according to this, it looks like you're looking more of a square footage of the building to decide which licensing, an A or B?
Just in the case of grocery stores, so the larger scale grocery stores would fall under, I believe it was Class A, and that was 5,000 square feet or more. I believe that's the only square footage.
I was just trying to picture what would be a 5,000. I'm thinking of the 7-Eleven, the convenience store.
Yeah, those would probably all be under,
Those
right?
are under, like a Jewel, Westbrook
You're looking at the
Market.
bigger ones then.
Sure.
Well, I think
where their retail is, 95% something other than tobacco.
the ordinance is drafted, clearly states that when you have grocery stores over 5,000 square feet, restaurants and gasoline stations, they sell products other than tobacco and tobacco products as their primary and main business. Even though gas stations sell a lot of cigarettes, the 7-Elevens sell even more, and the small retailers. So Class A is your primary business is something other than tobacco. Class B is a lot of tobacco.
So what's hookah buzz?
Why, I don't know. That is a loaded question.
They sell tobacco?
Well, yeah, I would say that they
So-
are using it on
make this
premises.
non-business specific.
Right.
Because we're talking about general regulations that affect everyone. Let's,
Yeah.
at this
They're a
point,
tobacco enterprise of some sort.
yeah, I know Anne Marie worked on this with staff, and I've looked it over once it was put in final form. The one thing that may be missing that we should consider adding is what constitutes a violation, where a license can be revoked, suspended, or an owner fined, and what's the process before we can do that. And I would turn to our alcohol ordinance, which sets it out very clearly. Have to give notice, due process, public hearing, that sort of thing. There is a right in this license. It should not be arbitrarily taken away. Right now, it's silent on that, and that's easy enough to add to this.
Yeah, and my question on the square footage only was because there could be a small store with just a small amount of cigarette things behind them, but they sell mostly, groceries or other staple items, and they're going to fall under the other end because of, their size. That's why I didn't know if we should actually include a percentage like we do on some of the things where it says if part of your business is 90% this or 75% that, you know, to help these smaller businesses who might just happen to sell some of the tobacco not be labeled as a tobacco store or have to pay the same amount as a business who would have to pay who would be a tobacco business. There are some who just happen to sell some.
Well, I don't want to get into the percentage monitoring business.
Right, that would be very difficult to regulate, as I understand it. We'd actually have to see receipts and they'd have to provide.
Okay, my question then, what about the newsstand? I'm almost never in there, but I believe they sell tobacco, but they sell a lot of other things. Where would they stand? Are they going to be considered a tobacco store?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
Small, they're a newsstand, they're under 5,000 square feet, but they do sell tobacco, so they're a Class B.
So that'd be the B then.
John, are you envisioning like how the alcohol with the liquor license selling to minors and all that, so that we add this into the tobacco dealers?
Yeah, we can either itemize what all the potential violations are, or to the extent we can easily reference state law, maybe we just have a cross-reference those violations.
I think that's a good idea. And just tell me, what about the tobacco could be used to smoke tobacco products? Is that covered under tobacco dealers, or is it just actually leaf tobacco in any form that's covered under tobacco dealers?
Any sort of tobacco sales are covered.
Okay, I'm talking about the head shops.
That's
where they
paraphernalia.
Okay.
And that's covered under a separate section of our business licensing ordinance.
Good, and we don't need to put anything under here. This is the tobacco itself.
Correct.
Thanks. That's what I wanted to know. Not wacky tobacco either. Okay. Anything else? All right, we'll see that on Monday. Next item, downtown development permit for West Burlington. Board to consider an ordinance approving a development grant request for Uptown Cigars, a cigar, cigarette, and grocery store in the downtown B1 district at 4 West Burlington Avenue, which I would guess would be a Class B. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
This is Vic Shaw, the potential proprietor of Uptown Cigars. Interesting timing, given the conversation that we were just having on the draft changes to our ordinance. Mr. Shaw, if you can just kind of explain your connection to the petitioner and then your involvement with running the shop.
Yeah. Okay. I am here on behalf of my dad. His name is Jayendra Shah. And we've been in this business for the last 10 years. We have 2 locations, one in Norwich and one in Park Ridge, downtown. And we've been doing really good with the cigar shop and all that. And we sell mainly cigarettes, tobacco, lighters, humidors, pipe, hookah tobacco, and all that stuff. And we want to do in Westmont like a highly cigar store, like it's really high-end stuff, nothing like not a cheap stuff or anything like that. We want to do something that they cannot find it anywhere else around this area.
Your application says you also want to be a grocery store.
Yeah. A grocery is like just had to have a candy or pop, something like that.
Okay, so not a grocery store with
snacks.
Produce.
Snacks, yeah, just like candy or pop.
This is the retail space where the cigar store used to be?
Yes.
Next to Westmont Pharmacy?
Yes.
So you would sell tobacco to adults and candy to children under the same roof?
Yes.
I'm not happy with that. I don't think that's a good mix, but that's your call.
I believe that the last tenants there, had comparable items for sale. They were allowed to smoke there because they had fallen under the state law as being grandfathered in, but the site's been vacated by that last tenant for so long that the new potential operator understands that there would be no smoking within the unit itself because it's not a freestanding building.
Yeah.
So it would just be the sale of those items.
My thought right now is we've got the possible TIF downtown, we've got the comprehensive stand. Has anybody brought this over with our comprehensive people to see if this is something that we should be even considering anymore for downtown?
I'm not sure that they would have specific comment other than it being just kind of a retail shop.
Well, I think a lot of your downtowns that you look at across the suburbs and other places in the downtown district you will find cigar shops.
Humidor, right in downtown Downers Grove.
I mean, that's something, it's a growing thing. I mean,
Well, my question is, it's going to be called Uptown Cigar, and you want to sell cigars and tobacco products. However, it also says in your email that you want to sell soft drinks, candy, lottery tickets, newspapers, coffee, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Is this a cigar store that's also a newsstand?
No.
Okay.
Just to have it something that people, whoever comes in the store, they can have everything at once. That's what we want to do. And because we don't have that big of a store, we might not do any coffee or anything. We are thinking about that because of the railway station here.
Mm-hmm.
People, they might need a coffee because around here I see there is no coffee store.
Right across the street, Brewed Awakenings. Right by the train station.
Right by the, okay.
Specialize in coffee.
Okay.
And that's why I want to know is if you're going to be another newsstand like
No.
we already have.
No. It's going to be strictly cigar, mainly cigar. If we sell, it's going to be a little bit, like a little of the candy and little pop. Mainly cigar shop.
To ensure, that you know what you're approving, you can write into the ordinance granting the development permit exactly what the owner is requesting and what you would like to see, so that if this changes over time and becomes, more a grocery store, because, and that's not what you necessarily envisioned here, you can go back, revoke their development permit, and force them to reapply for what they're actually doing there. If their intention is to sell high-end cigars and related tobacco products and accessories with incidental sales of, something, maybe we can put
What
that
I
in
don't
ordinance.
see is, we're talking high-end cigars and we're talking 50-cent candy.
Exactly.
Yeah, to
It
me,
doesn't, it doesn't match.
To me, you're describing more of a Speedway gas station,
Yeah.
quite honestly.
No, it's just why we want to carry the candy because most of the cigar smoker, they want to have some kind of peppermint in their mouth, while they're smoking a cigar. So that's why we want to carry that. They can have that thing also available.
How similar is this going to be with the two places you've got now?
This is a little bit smaller than the one that we have.
Same
But
products.
basically the same.
Same thing, yeah.
They're in Norwich and what did you say? Park Ridge?
Downtown, yeah.
And what are they called?
One is
Road
a
trip.
Cigars Plus, and the second one is Around the World Cigars.
have you been into the Humidor in downtown Downers Grove?
I'm sorry, was that?
Have you been to the Humidor?
Yes, I have.
Is your place going to be similar to that? Similar motif,
Yes.
similar style?
Yeah. It's going to be like
They
that.
just sell, if I remember, I've been there
They
a couple
sell mainly
times, just cigars.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Cigars,
Stogies.
humidors, and maybe lighters and cutters.
Yeah, that's what we
No
want.
hookahs, no hookah tobacco, no food, no candy.
No food.
Soda.
It's not going to be food. No chips even. We're planning of doing only candies and pop. That's it.
No cigarettes either?
No cigarettes too.
You're going to sell cigarettes?
Yes.
You are going to sell
We are
cigarettes?
going to sell cigarettes.
I just get this picture of it not being a nice humidor style. I don't know.
It really,
You have pictures of any of your other stores?
I might not have.
This is going to take a road trip.
Yeah.
yeah.
think so.
I'll have to go see the store.
While he's looking for it, can I get a feeling of how many days a week are you going to be open? What are your hours of operation you're thinking about?
We are thinking of 7 days a week.
7 days a week? And what about your hours? What do you think?
Probably 9 to 7, Monday through Friday.
9 to 7, so you won't be open for the people heading to the train to Chicago, but you will be open by the time they're coming home?
Actually, that's what we have to figure out. We don't know much about that schedule right now. Once we get to know, we might be open early.
Okay, and what about how many employees do you think you'll have?
We're going to have only 2 employees.
2 employees?
1 full-time and 1 part-time.
What are the names of your other 2 stores again?
Cigars Plus,
Cigars Plus?
yes. And that one is in Norwich.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is in Park Ridge. It's called Around the World Cigars and Gift.
Around the World Cigars and Gifts?
Yeah.
That's in Park Ridge?
That's in Park Ridge, yeah.
Of the 2 businesses you currently own,
Yeah.
which is going to be the closest to what you're proposing here? So if I go and visit and take a look and see, which one's going to be more adequately representing what you're going to propose here? Of the 2 businesses.
I would say both because you can go to the Cigars Plus, the Norwich, that I'm going to be there.
Okay, and Desmond, what are your hours on Saturday and Sundays?
Saturday and Sunday in Cigars Plus 9 to 8 and Sunday 10 to 5.
Okay, and the Round the World?
9 to 6 on Saturday and 10 to 5 on Sunday.
Okay, and do you have the addresses for both?
Yes, I do have it. The Cigars Plus is 8319 West Lawrence Avenue.
Okay.
Norwich, Illinois 60706.
Okay, and the one in Park Ridge?
31 and a half South Prospect Avenue.
31 and a half South?
South Prospect Avenue.
Prospect.
Yes.
That's Park Ridge.
That's in Park Ridge.
I have a question, maybe for our attorney, is, let's say Monday we pass this tobacco dealer licensing, we, in theory, vote on him and it's a yes, and we find out 3 days later when he's filling out his application, after we already voted for him, to be in here, that anything comes up and now he can't be a tobacco shop, he can't get his license in town. What happens then? It almost seems like, are we doing it too quick? You know, should we wait until we vote on the licensing program first, so we can do all those appropriate checks and balance if we were to approve it?
You certainly have the right to approve this first, and that's a risk the applicant has to take, knowing that the village may implement the licensing scheme, but if they feel comfortable that they can pass a very routine background check, they should feel, have some confidence moving forward. That's up to the applicant.
Okay.
Well, there appear to be a lot of unknowns here, so what I would like to do is postpone it for 2 weeks till the next committee of the whole, gives us an opportunity to do a road trip, gives an opportunity to enact the new tobacco
It'll actually
licensing.
be in May.
Sounds like a good
It'll be in
plan.
May. This is the long break, so we don't have a meeting now till like May 3rd or something.
Okay.
But that's good. I think we should.
So the next committee of the whole.
Next committee of the whole.
Everybody okay with postponing the next committee of the whole so we can?
That'll give us a chance to go look at the other stores and kind
See
of get a
some
sense of
pictures,
what it's
check it
going to
out,
be.
yeah.
Right.
We're getting ready to do a TIF down here, and we want to make sure it's going to be a good fit for our.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a nice place, I want to see it.
We owe it to our residents to do our homework, and that's what we all want to do. So, Mr. Shaw, we're going to postpone this until the next committee of the whole, which is May 3rd. Okay? Thank you.
So we can just pull it from the building anyway. Yes. We don't have to have a vote. We can just pull it from the agenda.
Just want to pull it?
Yeah.
Just like.
Do we need a vote to do it?
Take it off.
No, just take it off.
Take it off.
Okay. Alrighty. Number 6, electric aggregation. Board to hear a staff report regarding the outcome of the recent March 2012 electric aggregation ballot referendum question. And who's speaking on that?
I am.
Oh.
To begin with.
No one at the podium.
Okay, the first part of this is to report to the board that we have contacted DuPage County and verified that they've certified the vote. It was a very close vote. As you probably know, it was 50.44% in favor. It is a binding referendum, so we have an obligation to go forward with the aggregation process. And to that end, we put this on the agenda for discussion, and about a day or so before the deadline for the agenda, we were contacted by the Village of Downers Grove and asked to meet and talk about the concept of maybe trying to put together a consortium of sorts to market our two communities to see if we could get some economies of scale in terms of the actual cost. This week we had a couple of meetings. We have our consultant who we would like the board to consider an agreement on Monday with. You have a second draft that I've passed out this evening, but I understand that there needs to be some further tweaking of that from the village attorney. But this has been negotiated between the village and Mr. Belden, Jim Belden from Belden Energy. You know him from past meetings that he's attended, our committee meetings, as well as the hearing that we had on the electric aggregation. He's also participated in the most recent meeting we had with the Village of Downers Grove. We have an understanding of sorts with the Village of Downers Grove that we would be hiring Mr. Belden as our consultant, as our broker for this project. And then at the next set of meetings, we would be looking at the potential of an intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Downers Grove to sort of bring their population in with ours for purposes of marketing the aggregate program. a little bit ahead of us in terms of working on their governance document. I just saw an email this evening that they've shared that with us late this afternoon. That's a step that we still have to work towards. And the other thing I wanted to mention is the meeting that we had yesterday with Downers Grove. We also learned the possibility that the Village of Lisle might also join us. So we might actually have a consortium of 3 communities. I did not hear today whether or not that is a greater or lesser possibility. Downers Grove is going to be contacting them again to find out. We'll probably have more specific answer on Monday. But I'd be happy to introduce Mr. Belden. I don't know if you want to make any comments, Mr. Belden, regarding the process at this point.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. As village manager had pointed out, we're having some very productive discussions, and there are synergies that will occur by creating a consortium, whether the consortium is of 2 or whether it's of 3 villages. Not only will that benefit in the sense of going to market and going to the electric suppliers, there's also synergies in the sense that there will be a substantial reduction in the cost associated with the program that will be borne by the village of Westmont's residents. So that, I think, is a double benefit of bringing together the collective knowledge of 2 or 3 communities, as well as cost sharings that will bring down the cost to each one of those respective members. So if there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer them at this time.
Yeah, I guess one thing is, I was standing at the shop the other day, and there were a couple of gentlemen that came in from another company, and they were trying to sell the lower thing. And I was listening to the spiel as they were going through it, and it was like, okay, time out a second. Let me ask you a couple of questions. Now, the first question I have is, when we say small commercial retail electrical loads, what's going to determine small commercial electrical loads? That would be the first question. What size are we talking about?
The Illinois Commerce Commission had just passed in the last week. They had voted on a procedure where ComEd can now define what the term small commercial actually means. Last year, the term was very much inclusive, and the threshold was 100 kilowatts of peak demand. And to give you an idea of that, that would include fast food restaurants like a Burger King, like a McDonald's, a fairly substantial small business. The commission had taken testimony and now has changed that definition to be consistent with the Public Utilities Act. Now they are saying that the correct definition of small commercial is 15,000 kilowatt hours a year. And to put that into some perspective, the average Westmont household may be around 8,000 kilowatt hours a year. So it gives you an idea that probably some of the more modern vintage houses here, say in the 3,000 square foot or above, are probably testing that 15,000 kilowatt threshold.
But that's a definition only assigned to commercial. The
Correct.
Residential would still be included. It is an opt-out program, so people can always opt out if they choose to go with another vendor.
So when ComEd provides the village with data, with customer-specific data, that will include all of the commercial accounts that would be eligible for participation in the village's aggregation program.
Well, the other thing is, I want to make sure that the public or any of our businesses are listening out there. Be careful as how they sell this to you, because the comment that they made was that, yes, we understand that this aggregate program is going into effect in your village, and we're just trying to do this so they can save right now, but the minute your program goes into effect, you know, we'll take ours off the table. And my question was, so if ours went into effect next month, then whatever agreement you have is done. Well, no. It's usually a year or 2 years. I said, so then you're not
No, you'd be signing.
taking it off you're
Be signing
you're
an
not taking it
agreement
off.
for some term, I would
Right.
assume. Yeah, a year or
Yes,
two.
you do have to be careful, and small commercial customers in the village have to be concerned because they are entering into a legally binding agreement.
Right.
And that agreement may stipulate any type of financial consequences if there's an early termination to that agreement. So it definitely is a matter of looking at the details and not only listening to what the salesman is talking about, but also reading exactly what does it mean for term and what are the consequences of an early termination. And to add on to the time frame, the time frame that we're envisioning is to have public hearings in the month of May and be able to look at a procurement actually going out to market and soliciting bids in the month of June with implementation probably looking at August. So it's not a year off. It's a matter that we are focused, and working with the consortium does give us the impetus to move forward in an expeditious way. So we do have a vision of having this continue to move forward in progress and be implemented probably in mid to late summer.
So at the next set of meetings, we would hope to have a draft IGA to look at with Downers Grove, possibly the Village of Lisle. That's great. And the village attorney's looking at me, and it will be drafted by the Village of Downers Grove attorney, so I'll get a copy of you as soon as that was part of their commitment to our team effort. So we'll be happy to get that to you as soon as it's provided to us. And then I'm trying to remember, I believe we would have our first hearing at that meeting. We're going to do 2 consecutive hearings on the plan of governance. Like I said, I have a draft from Downers Grove that I'll circulate, probably this week for you to look at. We may want to make some adjustments ourselves to that before we get to the hearing point. But
I think one of the things that I had when George had his chamber open house there, I happened to be speaking with I'm not certain if he's the owner or the manager of the Best Western, and he had been involved, and I had left the message for you, and I don't know if you got a hold of it. I had asked you to, I think with Patty, to have you talk with him, because his concern was, I guess they did something similar, these businesses got to do with, and I believe it was NICOR or something, they got to buy a special lower rate, and you could, so he's locked in at this one rate, and NICOR dropped their price, and he's paying almost double the price right now of what he was, and then he tried to get out. He was reading and trying to figure out how to get out of this thing now, and then by the time he read it, they said, oh, sorry, you're too late. He's locked in for another 2 or 3 years, and so he was giving us a fire warning of be really careful.
we've actually talked about that in our meeting yesterday, and I can't remember the phrase that the attorney from Downers Grove used. We were talking about a favored nation sort of clause, but it's do you remember the term?
Well, the concept that we would approach is to make sure that we can go to market and make sure that if the ComEd rate in the future had ever dropped below the rate that was offered to the village, that the supplier would adjust the rate downward to match ComEd or would allow the village to exit the agreement without penalty.
So we would bid it out that way and have that provision.
Okay.
That was something we specifically talked with Downers Grove. They were concerned about it.
Yeah, and I was right, because I thought we discussed it in the beginning. Was there something that would happen? But, like I said, he's stuck now for another 2 or 3 years.
Because we understand that ComEd will be going back out for bids, I think this summer, right?
Yeah, the current methodology for setting the current ComEd price is that they will acquire power from the Illinois Power Agency every spring. So there's a big variation that the village can take advantage of right now, and it has to do with the structure of contracts that the state of Illinois entered into. In the same example, the Best Western hotel chain, where the state of Illinois entered into long-term agreements that are now higher than the market price. They have to blend that in with market prices, but unfortunately it turns out to be above market of what we will get when we go out. And to give an example, we're probably looking in the order of about a 30% reduction in the cost of electric supply from what residents are paying right now for ComEd supply versus what we expect out of the procurement, the aggregation program. So this difference will last probably for at least 12, if not 24 months.
Okay. But there is a way we can protect and get out of it, or lower price or equal price with ComEd should something happen. That's basically what I want to make sure that
That's
we're
how
covered.
it's structured. Is that part of the plan of governance, or is
yes,
it part of how it's bid?
There'll be a number of specifics that will be outlined in the plan of governance, and that will be one of the important items. Probably a couple of the consumer protection items that we will put into the plan will be to figure out if someone wants to exit the program as an individual, what will be the cost? You know, and we would want to make sure that that would be reasonable and fair, so that it would not be a matter that says if you were to exit the program, it would be a significant financial burden.
This is an opt-out program, though, correct?
Yes.
Where
they could just decide they don't want to participate from the beginning.
Initially, once the operating agreement is approved, et cetera, they'd have a time period to opt out and never participate and just stay with ComEd.
Yeah, they could, but I think he was worried because of the time span was vague when he tried to do it, and then when he tried to get out of it, it was like, sorry, Charlie, you're too late. Your time is over. Now you're stuck for another 2 years or whatever. And so he was, very concerned when he heard this was on the ballot and said, please make sure, that there is a time and that we watch if there is any date to get out of it. Should ComEd lower their prices, that we have a chance to get our residents out of this too.
Well,
so.
The only thing I have to say, and I got to throw it out on the table just because it's just sitting there, ComEd lowering their prices is an oxymoron. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Well, it happened in Ohio.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, right now, they're still pushing this other program, and they're pushing for a rate increase again.
And you have to remember that there are the two components. That one component that where ComEd makes its money on the delivery, and that's where they still are going out for the rate increases, and that is the part that's regulated by the Illinois Commerce Commission. So they will look at the prudency during a rate proceeding. The other part which is not regulated in that strict sense is the supply portion. And again, that's where ComEd is completely indifferent to whether a resident is taking supply from them under a tariff rate or whether they're going out to the market and seeking a better opportunity. And that's available to everyone. So we're going to take advantage of the economies and the scales that the consortium will have.
Cool. Good.
Now, on this new draft here, I see there's a difference in the compensation.
Mm-hmm.
This is the...
Yes, I would like to compliment Mr. Belden on his very generous discussions with us and negotiating different rates based on the consortium and the potential of the consortium to grow. We've talked and gathered some information on a couple of other consortiums. We think these are very competitive rates based on what other communities are paying, and both our staff and Downers Grove staff is very satisfied with it.
Great.
That's good stuff.
Anything else?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will put the consultant agreement on for Monday for approval.
Sounds good.
In its final form.
All right, number 7 and number 8, we may sort of cross over between them, but number 7 under new business is the stray care agreement with the Hinsdale Humane Society. Board to consider authorizing an agreement with the Hinsdale Humane Society to provide stray animal care. And number 8, the stray domestic animal release fee board to consider an ordinance creating a stray domestic animal release fee to be charged to owners of a domestic animal that are stray or at large and then picked up and housed by the village.
Good evening. This is something that was covered at our Public Safety Committee meeting a while ago, and we have finally worked with the Hinsdale Humane Society to provide shelter for stray animals which we pick up. Currently, we use Downers Grove Animal Hospital, and it's been a direction by several members of the board to look for as close as we could get to a no-kill shelter. And Hinsdale Humane Society is pretty much the closest we can get. They will have an adoption service, and they will house our animals. That's right with this agreement. It also restricts the costs that we will be responsible for. The village will be required to pay $25 for every animal and cat that is brought in, and I believe $50 for cats, and up to no more than $100 depending on the status of the animal. If they feel through their evaluation it's best to euthanize the animal, they will do so, but they will also evaluate the animal, and if they feel the animal is viable for adoption, they will proceed with that. This way, it also is a financial savings to the village in that we're not paying for extended medical care, extended storage, and thus reducing our costs for our stray animal pickups. In conjunction with the animal fee, it was also proposed, too, that we consider creation of an animal fee. Anne Marie Lampero-Perez, our Deputy Village Attorney, found a ordinance where that was already in place where we could have charged $10, $15, or $20. This was new to me. However, we also looked at still leaving the fee at $25. This will offset the cost that the Humane Society charges us. Again, they will charge us $25 for the dog and the cats. This will be $25 for every animal. That way, if the owner does come and pick up the animal, it's no cost to the village. We're not incurring additional costs, so we're trying to recoup our costs. We still will be working with Downers Grove Animal Hospital for emergency veterinary care. And we've also reached out to another local business in town, West Suburban Veterinary Service on Warwick, just south of Ogden, and they're agreeable to take injured animals and some strays, limited strays, because they aren't set up for that. So we're changing our policies for our officers, so now we have 3 options instead of 1.
Good. Couple of things that I have in the materials that were provided to us. The agreement with the Hinsdale Humane Society, the stray care agreement, paragraph 4, subparagraph D says, the society shall dispose of all impounded animals not redeemed by the owners thereof within the period of redemption set forth upon by the society. I thought we were going to reach an agreement with them because then I see in the ordinance about the proposed ordinance for the administrative fee for animal recapture, it says it shall be the duty of the pound keeper or animal shelter facility to humanely dispose of all animals unredeemed not sooner than the end of the what used to be 3rd day changed to the 5th day.
Correct.
The Public Safety Committee meeting, I thought we had discussed we needed at least 7 for people who were out of town on vacation. That 3 or 5 days, and to say it's the duty of the animal shelter to dispose of the animal not sooner than 5 days is frightening.
We looked into Illinois statutes. The Humane Society their current policy is 5. We asked them for 7 for different reasons. To be quite honest with you, I forgot that part of the discussion. Their current policy is 5 days. We asked them under Illinois statute required 7 days, but that's where only if the owner is known. They're required by law to keep the animal for 7 days where the owner is known by chip or by license or something like that. Where they were talking for 5 days is for where the animal owner is unknown. It's not chipped or anything like that. They were reluctant to go to 7 days. I can talk to them to see if they would increase that. But I know when we asked them to go to 7 or why 7, their policy and with the other villages is 5, and that's why they recommended 5.
Can we put in the agreement that for the society and the ordinance that it's not sooner than the end of the 5th day for where owners are unknown, but seventh day where they're known pursuant to Illinois law, because I don't want to shorten
Understand it.
the maximums that we can get under state law.
And I think they would be agreeable to that, because I had a conversation with Jennifer yesterday. Our concern was, the law said 7 days, how can they, my question to them directly, how can you do something in 5 days? She called the state veterinarian down in Springfield and confirmed that for animals where the ownership is unknown, a town can legislate any time period they want. Some were 3, some were 5. Where the animal is known, they send notices, they send mail, they try to make every type of notification possible, and then if it's unclaimed after 7 days, that's when they take action. So I think if we limit 5 where the owner is unknown, their policy is, again, and law requires 7 days if the owner is known.
Okay.
And I apologize for not part with the vacation.
That's okay. You couldn't possibly remember all the things we bring to your attention. And the other thing is that people need to know that we're proposing to amend Chapter 2 regarding dogs and cats running at large. It always said any dog running at large and off leash. It includes now dog or cat. Thus the new ordinances about redemption fees for cats. When we look at this proposed ordinance, John, it says impounding, redemption, disposition of unredeemed dogs. Can you either make it dogs and cats or animals, domestic animals?
Yep.
They had that iguana, didn't they?
And ferrets. There was a ferret running around our neighborhood the other day.
Yeah.
Maybe it's wild. And that goes, this section, when you read it literally, it says any dog or cat.
Mm-hmm.
It only refers to dog and cats.
I know, and it actually should say domestic animals.
I mean, people have pet rabbits.
I know, and I'm saying,
and as we know, ferrets.
One of our neighbors' ferret got out the other day.
And
Yeah,
iguanas.
but I don't know how you'd tell a pet one from a wild one.
They're usually white.
And I think the Hinsdale Humane Society agreement addresses domesticated animals, not just dogs and cats.
It does, it just
I'll
says
have to
not
confirm with
wildlife.
them. Our main concern was, which is the majority of stray calls, is animals and cats. I didn't think of
We think of
domesticated
everything,
animals.
snakes, you know, all that.
And we've had those. Also, too, like I said, we don't have an agreement. We will probably be working with West Suburban Animal Hospital as well for their services. I'm beginning to become a very big fan of agreements with these to make sure that we have everything covered, especially when we're using their services.
The other thing that I noticed was that in the Hinsdale Humane Society stray care agreement with the village, it talks about, in paragraph 9, the fee, and we refer to it in our ordinance as a fine, but the redemption fee for dogs and cats. But it also talks about, as a separate cost, there's kennel costs, there's veterinarian fees, there's food costs, and rightfully so, this should be borne by the owner reclaiming it. There's nothing in the ordinance about, in addition to that redemption fee, they're responsible for paying these other costs that are in our agreement, that are in the agreement with the village. So the village may have to front them, but the redemption of the animal will include those costs that the society charges as outlined in the agreement. Okay?
Makes sense.
Yes, just to be clear, so I understand it, they do require the owner to pay for,
It does say that.
again, the care, everything like that.
Right. But the ordinance doesn't say.
I understand, I understand.
We need to,
Yeah, before they would
Get that.
release the animal, they would do that.
correct.
But they will charge us $25, and that's why we wanted to capture that 25.
Right, and that's going to be passed through and all that. So there's no extra cost to the village. And if somebody doesn't like what they have to pay, then Hinsdale Humane Society may end up putting the animal up for adoption to a better home, like mine.
One of the things I was thinking about when we were talking about claiming and the time span, and maybe something we can work on at a later date, but is there any chance we could possibly have a photo of the animal, put it on our website, so say this animal is at the Humane
Westmont's
Society?
most wanted.
Yes.
Are you missing Bootsy, or, I mean, just a little thing to show people who may not realize it.
Well, my greatest fear is because, when we go somewhere, we go far and we're gone a long time. And even though trustee Fleming is our backup go-to guy for Finn and Sylvia, if someone knocks it, sends me a letter, I'm not going to get it.
Yeah.
And God forbid something happens to mine, but,
Yeah, emergency contacts.
Does staff have time to do something like that?
We're revamping our procedures. CSO Terry is overseeing our animal policy. She is going to begin putting efforts in place to track this. The problem is the equipment officer is taking the picture, uploading it. It would have to come over to the next day when somebody has the ability to do that. If it happens on a Friday night at 10 o'clock at night, it may sit until Monday because no one that comes in has the ability to do that. Something we could look into it.
Mugshots.
There you go.
Yeah, it's
Little orange jumpsuits.
Yeah, the officers have cameras. They have the ability to take the picture. It's the problem of getting the picture from point A to point B, getting it onto the village website.
And it would mostly be for the ones that don't have, that they can't find an owner that doesn't
Well,
have
if they
anything
take a
about it.
picture and then they email it to Glenn, I guess we ask Glenn.
Just out of curiosity, how often is this happening?
It wouldn't be too often, I don't think.
I don't have the statistics in front of me during
we
the
see it
daytime,
in
more
the
during the
finance
daytime and the
report once
weekend.
in a while. But, are we spending a lot of time on something that happens, once a quarter? Or
No,
is it significant?
no. The lost animals?
Yeah.
I would safely say probably 3 times a week.
Okay.
At a minimum.
Okay, so it's significant.
Yeah. There's been, it ebbs and flows. And now at the springtime, there seems to be more. And
Well, with a lost animal, someone would be out looking for it. If they're on
True.
vacation, they're not going to leave it in their backyard.
Right.
You would hope.
You're assuming that's
Correct.
what's going to happen. And if they do, then it's unfortunate for their responsibility. They didn't take care of their dog. But anybody
They
who's
shouldn't have
lost
the
it,
dog anyway.
But to be honest, my cat got out the other night, and I had no idea. I don't know how he got out,
but at least you're looking for him.
No, I didn't
She
know
didn't know he was gone.
missing
Okay, all right.
because
I didn't. Yeah, my dog got out on
Jailbreak.
he Got off.
But when did you realize it?
He's a sneaky
Next day?
that cat.
No, well, I never realized he was missing. I just happened to look on my back.
There he was.
And he was
my
looking back at you?
Back door, and he was sitting out there looking at me like, "Are you going to let me back in?"
My dog got unhooked somehow.
You met
We put
Bob.
her out and tethered her in the back to go to the bathroom, and we didn't know until the next door neighbor rings and said, "I think we got your dog in our house." And we had no idea she had gotten out on us, got loose. So it happens.
in talking with Roseanne, she has told me since she's working Monday through Friday, she's responsible for animal calls while she's on duty. We had an animal, and she said, I wish she was off on a Friday. I think it was Good Friday. She said, I wish I would have been working. She tends to know most of the dogs at large that, are the reoffending or the reoccurring. If she's seen the dog, maybe she says, I probably may have known where the owner was.
Talk about those repeat offenders now.
Well, we unfortunately have more than we should. The other thing is, too, is we're trying to, when you pick up this fee, we're going to require you to make sure that you have a animal license with you. I believe in checking with the clerk's office, we have less than 100 animal licenses issued, and I can tell you, I guarantee there's more than 100 dogs in the village of Westmont. So we're going to try to...
Cat license provision, too?
I don't know. That's why I said, change my mind when I word to dog.
Cockatiels, how about them?
No for iguanas. So she does have an idea. Some dogs you can tell are actually astray. Just by their condition and the way they are. Most responsible owners will have their animal chipped and/or have the animal license. That's why we feel that the 5 days, for mostly unclaimed or unknown dogs was reasonable. 7 days, though, we just comply with the state law. But she's been very good. She's going to oversee this. And also as well, too, this one animal we checked with local towns because a dog was found along 63rd Street. So we checked with other towns, do you have any other dogs that are missing? We keep a log of lost animals. If someone were to call to say my dog is lost, we keep a track of that with the Downers Grove VOC. So when officers check that, they check to see, hey, does this match any lost dogs? We try to match up the owner that way. We just don't pick up the animal and house it. We do take minimal steps to try to find the owner.
Okay.
Good.
Appreciate that.
The residents appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. The gentleman in the green shirt, I believe, is up next. GASB 54 implementation.
Color of money.
Board to consider an ordinance authorizing the following for implementation of GASB 54. A, delegating authority to assign fund balance to the finance director. B, committing Westmont Center Common Area Maintenance, CAM, C-A-M, acronym, payments for the purpose of promoting tourism and conventions, including but not limited to maintenance of the Westmont Center. Our acting finance director, would you please explain for the people viewing at home very quickly what GASB 54 is, and also explain Part A, delegating the authority to assign the fund balance to the finance director does not mean that we are giving the finance director the funds.
Yes, that is
because of our
correct.
history. I'm throwing that out.
That's all very correct. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB, is the body which issues the pronouncements for how governments do their accounting. And they've issued statement number 54, which deals with how we report fund balance, which is similar to net equity in the private sector, how we report those in our financial statements. And they've come up with several different categorizations of the fund balance to kind of be able to describe to residents or those who look at the financial reports what level of restriction there is on that fund balance. The level where it has at least some restriction, but the least amount of restriction is called assigned fund balance. And so Part A, which would delegate authority to make that assignment, would be to the finance director, would simply mean that the finance director would have the ability to say, we'd kind of like to use this money in this general area. And that's the extent of that restriction. It can be changed at any time. And of course, there would be the understanding that if the finance director were to make some assignment of fund balance for purposes of the audit or, for accounting technical reasons, then that assignment of fund balance would of course be reported to the boards. The board's aware of it, and there would be no surprises. The next level of restriction would be what's called committed fund balance, and that's where the board has designated fund balance for a specific purpose. And part of the change under GASB 54 is that in order to maintain a separate fund, then that's for special revenue, that revenue has to be officially committed for that specific purpose. Right now, the fund that we have that could potentially go away under GASB 54 if we do not take action is the Convention Tourism Fund. And right now, the main source of revenue we have going in there is these common area maintenance fees, which people who our tenants over at the Westmont Center pay to provide their portion of the common area maintenance is going into that fund. And if we do not take any action, then the fund will simply be rolled into the general fund and go away. It's staff recommendation that we continue to keep this fund, and to do that, then the board would commit this revenue for the purpose of convention tourism. Are there any additional questions?
That was a great explanation.
Thank you very much.
Could we also use this moment in my excitement earlier about the chief's announcement about St. Baldridge Day? I forgot to mention that we have a budget hearing coming up on Saturday.
I was just thinking the same thing.
He'll be modeling his new hairdo, or lack of hairdo.
So I wanted to remind the board and the public in general that we do have a budget hearing coming up Saturday at 3 p.m. Our second one.
Volunteer Week proclamation. Board to consider an ordinance proclaiming April 15th through 21st, 2012 as Volunteer Appreciation Week. As is usual, on Monday night, the proclamation will be read, but it is important to note that Westmont has a large cadre of volunteers without which probably 92% of what goes on in this town would not happen. The other 8% is the board meetings. So luckily we have all those volunteers for everything else fun to happen in town. And we're all appreciative of them every week. We don't need a special week, but apparently we're going to have one anyway. And then we've got the finance ordinance number 24.
Waive the reading.
And purchase orders. Any questions on the purchase orders?
I just have a couple questions on the First purchase order for Clark Environmental. Because we're talking about the payments in May, June, July, and August, I take it this is on and locked into the budget.
Yes, well, this is the item that you reviewed at the last set of meetings. This is the purchase order part of the process, and it, yes, will be in the budget.
Yeah, it's locked in, so I mean, it's not something
Right.
that we're going to be looking at, so, good.
No, I mean, it's something it's a known cost, and as you recall, I think the cost has been frozen now for the third year in a row, I believe.
Very good, yeah, they're giving us a good one. And the other one was to the Mead Electric for the decorative pole. I presume that we're going to get reimbursed by the insurance company on this? It was...
Yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you. Thank you,
A
that's all I have.
question on one of the purchase orders for College of DuPage Basic Training Suburban Law Enforcement Academy.
Yes.
Are we now sending new police hires to College of DuPage for academy rather than traditional places for the academy?
Yes. We haven't sent one for College of DuPage for a while. We wanted to give them an opportunity. We checked around with other chiefs. They've had good reviews. They have a new facility, new management, as well as it's also a cost-setting move. If by keeping them closer here, the only other place would be Police Training Institute, which was down in Macomb. They moved to Macomb from Champaign. It's also a cost reduction as well to us by, I believe, I think it was around $3,000 or less.
This is cheaper than...
We like that.
Yes, yes, they're also closer. They can commute back and forth. We wanted to give them an opportunity and send our candidates there to see what type of training is there, and to see, give them a shot, give them a try.
How long is I know I'm familiar with College of DuPage, but how many classes have they put through that new academy?
The new building? Or
It's been around for how long?
We have an officer with over 10 years' experience that was through that in the past. It's been established there for some time. I would say definitely minimum 10 years that I know of.
Yeah. Well, the building's what?
Yeah, they put it, they put it in the Homeland Security building,
Yes,
didn't they?
yes. I don't know how many through that building. It's that facility. It's facilities less than a year, so I would imagine.
I'm just frightful of us being a guinea pig on the academy.
It's not a guinea pig. I mean, they have 27 recruits from this area. We were under a time limit. There's other recruits. They're farther away, we're farther away. Our time limit to get them in on this, all the academies we're finding out started pretty much on the same date. They all run on the same schedule. The only other option was Cook County, which I chose not to, which starts this month, or starts in May, and Chicago Police Department. I'd like to try to, they are DuPage teachers from this area. They pretty much go through the procedures a lot through DuPage, even though they are, through other counties. Lake County, I know sends officers there. We did have officers there in the past. We were trying to be budget conscious as well, and we wanted to see some of the officers there and see what their opinion was and see how it went.
But you did say that other area chiefs have had officers that have gone through recently, and they've had a good experience.
Yeah, I spoke to 2 other chiefs to say, has anybody heard anything bad? And it was all positive review. I know they've been a management change. I've had several conversations with the retired chief from Aurora. I know they're expanding their classes. They're doing management courses. They're doing a lot more. They're doing a lot more classes than they have in the past. And we are looking again, the cost savings as well as the commute as well.
All right. Thank you. I'm not as worried about cost savings when it comes to training our officers.
It's the state course. It's the state standards. The standards are set by the state, the Illinois Standards and Trainings Board. They still have to meet all those standards. They still have to do that. It should be the same training they receive. It basically is, because it's the basic curriculum is the same. That I don't know.
Okay.
That I could look into that to see. But I know that the basic course has to meet the same guidelines at any academy that you go to. Yes, the instructors may be different, and some of their rules and their administration is different. But the basic training is the standard. It's the standard training that all officers have to receive. Yes, it can vary from facility to
You could
facility.
get an answer to that question, that specific question by Monday, though, right?
If they're accredited?
Yes, I want to know if they have the same accreditations that what used to be in Champaign has, what CPD's Academy has, what all of the ones that have been there and trained a lot of good cops have.
Correct. I will check to see what they have compared to everyone else.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, on that note, anybody got anything else? Nope. With that, well...
Yeah, just one quick note. I've got to run. I've got a prior commitment, so I'm going to miss the executive session.
We'll see you Monday.
Yes. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, John. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session on the basis of personnel.
So moved, second. Oh,
Second,
first, second, third, whatever.
It's an argument on the left as to who moved, but go ahead, roll call.
Figured.
Trustee Sinica.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Fleming.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Klebanow.
Yes.
Trustee Inman.
Yes.